From the banks of Dewey Lake, it's the Dewey Pod Monster.
Well, welcome back. My name is John, and this is the Dewey Pod Monster podcast. This is a weekly podcast, and it's mostly about movies, but sometimes it's about consumption. We are proud members of the Run Podcast Network. You can find all of our old episodes, all of our new episodes, and all of our upcoming episodes, as well as the other great shows on the You Run Podcast Network at yourunpodcast.com. With me this week and every week is the host of the Dewey Pod Monster podcast, and his name is Sean. Sean, how are you I'm going to say this morning because that's when this is going to come out, even though we're recording in evening.
John, this morning, when you start to have a thought forming, I can see it go to your eyes like capillaries under a microscope.
If that's a quote from this week's movie, I don't remember it because that's how memorable this movie was. But we'll get to that later.
I think I hate you for making me watch this.
I didn't make you watch anything. If anything, you brought this one to my attention, but I digress. Before we get into that shit, what other shit have you been watching this week?
Well,
I'm curious if we have one that matches, but if you get to that one, we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
I don't know. That's a good point. So, WrestleMania is over. We've made it out.
Sadly.
Yes. Well, I mean, out of the shit into more shit, right? So, sadly, it's over.
This week made Firepower look like a goddamn Oscar winner.
I wanted to keep it going. I watched Dark Side of the Ring, Bloodfire, and the original Sheik, which I thought was kind of odd timing considering the recent death of Sabu. And the Sheik is Sabu's uncle. Did you watch Dark Side of the Ring? Is this one that we matched up on? Okay. I'll give a little brief background. I mentioned a couple weeks back that I don't really know much about the Sheik. I do know that he owned essentially Big Time Wrestling, which Big Time Wrestling was like the Detroit territory of professional wrestling. And I didn't know this, but Big Time Wrestling was something that they showed on TV. The Sheik had his own camera truck or production truck that he bought to broadcast Big Time Wrestling. And it was the biggest show in the Midwest from like the mid 60s, late 60s through the 70s. It sold out Cobo Arena like all the time. And at its height, the Sheik was claiming on his taxes that he was taking home $400,000 a year in the mid 70s, which is basically the equivalent of about $2 million a year now from this show. And the Sheik was his gimmick. He was a Lebanese American. His name was Ed Farhat, I believe. And he lived his gimmick. Like when he went out to restaurants, which he rarely did, he wouldn't speak to anybody in English unless they were like really close to him. He was very protective of his gimmick. And he was really known for being a very brutal and, just like a realistic wrestling style. He basically he brought hardcore wrestling, quote unquote, to the masses. He's one wrestler that was really known he's like the godfather of hardcore wrestling, essentially doing it in the 70s, the late 60s, like people getting cut open. Abdullah the Butcher was a big opponent of his. Bobo Brazil, who was like a local wrestler dude. I remember in high school, in our high school gym, they had a wrestling show. And I don't know if the Sheik was there, but I know Bobo Brazil was one of the wrestlers. And I was like, who the fuck is that? And my mom was like, oh yeah, Bobo Brazil, Big Time Wrestling. And this was like 20 years past his prime, I'm sure. But it basically, the show really kind of gets into how he used the money that he was making to go into his gimmick. He would arrive in like a limousine. He would always be in fancy suits. He had nice cars. He had built this huge mansion, and Sabu was his nephew. And Sabu's in the documentary or in the episode, kind of talking about his uncle. And the Sheik brought in Sabu. He trained Sabu. He trained Rob Van Dam, a couple other wrestlers. They're both like from the Detroit metro area. And the one thing I didn't really know about, they did like a fire match where they wrapped in Japan, where they wrapped the ropes in linen and they soaked it in kerosene and they lit them on fire, like all the ropes. And
sounds safe.
It burned so hot that it burned all the oxygen in the in the arena, like in the ring. So they had to get as close as they could
Yeah.
to the center of the ring because they couldn't breathe. It was burning all the oxygen up. And Sheik ended up getting 3rd-degree burns on like 20% of his body or something. He had to be like pulled out of the ring, and he ended up just like flying home the next night or that night or whatever on an airplane. And it's an interesting episode. I think the first couple episodes of Dark Side of the Ring for me were really great. Like I really, really enjoyed those episodes. I feel like these last few have been, there were, I think like the 4th and 5th episode of the season kind of took a little bit of a downturn. Like, these are okay stories, but I feel like it's starting to pick back up. So I'm still on that train, still looking forward to seeing what that has to bring. Next thing I wanted to touch on, you talked about this, I want to say about 6 months ago, maybe late last year-ish. My daughter asked me, she's like, hey, I really want to watch this movie. Will you watch it with me? And I said, yeah, sure. You know, I'm usually pretty open and wanting to watch the things that she wants to watch. So the movie that, no, absolutely
We're going to watch The Manipulator.
No, actually, the movie that she suggested and that we ended up watching was Totally Killer, which is the movie about time travel. It's like Back to the Future. I think you said something to the effect of Back to the Future meets, I don't know, a slasher movie or maybe Friday the 13th. I don't really know what the Scream,
No,
maybe.
you had it.
I don't remember what did you think of Totally Killer?
It was okay. I would have liked it a lot more if they didn't reference Back to the Future in the movie. I think that was a big negative for me because then it just really took the nostalgia knife and twisted it instead of just kind of hinting at it being there. I remember saying it had Scream vibes when I watched it, but I don't remember how at this point because it's been a few months. And I remember liking that the killer's mask kind of looked like Beavis, and I found that to be entertaining.
I didn't think Beavis. I definitely thought Max Headroom. That was one of my big complaints about the movie.
I mean, that too, but I thought Beavis, but they're both correct.
But I think the Beavis is kind of on point because the mask is so big. It's like this huge, it's almost like a diving bell helmet or something with like the yellow hair slick back paint on it. I thought it was okay. I didn't love it. It was a little ham-fisted. It felt like
I wouldn't say I loved it.
Yeah, no, but I'm not putting words in your mouth, but I also think that it felt like it was trying really hard to be kind of like, oh, this 2020s person goes back to the 80s and oh, everything's so politically incorrect. And
at the same time, I kind of feel like that kind of movie is a big thing that's missing in the world of cinema these days. There's so many movies that go out and set out to be, you know, either like this weekend, as we're recording this, the new Final Destination movie came out and the internet's jerking off all over it because there hasn't been a Final Destination movie in, I don't know, 10 years, whatever it's been. And I'm glad that people are happy and they seem to be enjoying it, and that's good. I refuse to believe that this is like I keep seeing people like, oh, this is the best fucking movie ever and all this. Like, I refuse to believe that Final Destination 6 or 7 or whatever it is this revelation in horror movies. I'm sure it's just more of the same. But where I'm going with this is I kind of miss the era of one-off throwaway movies, which sounds bad, but it's, you know, like genres that we love, like the action genre was just filled with one-off throwaway movies. Like that's half of any actor in that genre's career. It's just like, I got buffed, made this one movie, kicked the shit out of some dudes, and then went on to the next movie that was pretty much the same thing, but instead of being in the jungle, I'm in New York or, you know, whatever.
In the desert.
Yeah. And horror's got, you know, a rich history of one-off throwaway movies. And like I said, I'm not claiming that this is some revelation in horror or anything like that. Like, I don't think you are either. But just the fact that you could have a easily digestible, I don't remember that being excessively long, so I'm going to call it an hour and a half. Just you're in, you're out, and you're like, all right, I'm not mad that I watched that. Like, I kind of miss that kind of movie just being something that exists, and I don't see a lot of examples of that coming out.
Yeah, and it was nice that it was, like you said, it was about an hour and a half, and you know, my kid, it was all new stuff to her. She's not a big horror person, so it's also kind of fun to get into movies. Like we watched that on Saturday night, and I'm watching it just like, oh yeah, this isn't anything. It's kind of geared towards young adults or,
preteens,
you know,
or whatever.
Teenagers and whatnot. It was fine. The other movie that we watched this on Sunday night. We watched Trap, which I don't know if you know of Trap or have heard of Trap.
I know it's a Shyamalan movie, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the most recent M. Night Shyamalan.
Yeah,
Shyamalama
I
Ding
like
Dong
most
film.
Shyamalan. I heard very mixed things on it, like most of his movies, and I'm not a big fan of his, so I haven't had a real desire to get to it.
I was interested because I think on Netflix, the preview, or maybe it's on Amazon Prime, one of the streaming services, like the preview, I'm thinking it's Netflix, where they show like the 30 seconds just randomly in the middle of a movie. And Josh Hartnett is at the top of a set of stairs, and this girl, he like pushes this girl down the stairs, and she falls down the stairs. And I, being a sicko, I thought that was funny, and I laughed. And his daughter comes up to him. He's like, "Dad, what happened?" He's like, I think she had too much to drink. So the premise of the story is that there is a concert, and a guy takes his daughter to a concert, but there's police all around, and the concert was set up to try and catch a serial killer. They call the Butcher. And a lot of the movie, as you can guess, Josh Hartnett stars in this movie. He is, I'm not trying to spoil it for anyone, but he is the Butcher. And it's implied very early in the movie, and I'd say within 20 minutes, that's like the premise.
I feel like if the movie's based around trapping a serial killer, they're going to tell you who the killer is pretty quick.
Yeah, for sure. And the movie is centered around this concert. And I'd say probably 2/3 of the movie take place in this concert. And it's a lot of this footage of Josh Hartnett like slinking around in the arena to try and get backstage, or to try and get to places where he can find out more information as to how they're trying to catch him. But the movie being 2/3 in this concert, a lot of the footage is of them in the audience, and there's someone performing on stage, and the someone performing on stage is M. Night Shyamalan's real life daughter, with like original songs that she composed. And it's very much trying to be this, I would say, like a Taylor Swift character, but it's M. Night Shyamalan's daughter. And it feels very much like a vehicle that he wrote this movie, or he's making this movie so he can try and launch his daughter into this career as being this pop star. She's fine. It's fine. I would say the movie starts to, I don't know, there's like weird, it's very awkward. Like the dialogue's really awkward and kind of weird. And they use these camera angles where if two characters are talking to each other, rather than show it at that angle where it's kind of over the shoulder for one person, over the shoulder for the other, there are these several scenes where it's first person. So I'm talking to you, and when you're talking to me, the entire screen is just filled with your head and your face talking to me. And then when I talk to you, it's the flip, right? It's my entire face talking directly into your face. It's just really weird.
So it's
and
like a TikTok video, but an hour and a half long.
They kind of start to abandon that. It almost feels like when you go to see a 3D movie and they like, here, take the pen, and they put the thing right in the screen, and it's like poking you. It feels very much like it was supposed to be some kind of gimmick around the whole movie. And I would say once there's a portion of the movie that gets outside of the arena, and then the rest of the movie takes place. I would say that's probably like halfway mark, maybe 2/3 mark. It starts to get better. There wasn't any like big twist that I was like, oh my God, but there was so many like weird plot holes. They basically it's described that they set this whole concert up to trap the killer. And you're just kind of like, why would they do that? It's just it's a weird movie. It wasn't horrible. I like some of Shyamalan's early movies up until maybe like The Village. I thought that was probably his last like pretty good movie. This one was fine. I think it's kind of hit or miss with him, but it was fine. It was a PG-13 movie. It was like an hour and 43 minutes. It was something that was a little bit more appropriate than what my daughter had picked out initially. So we kind of ended up watching that, and she was pretty engaged with it. So I guess it was mission accomplished as far as that one goes. But those are the big three things that I watched this week. What have you been watching this week, John?
So now that I'm looking at it, I'm going to bring up three things, and two of them I know you've watched, and one of them apparently you haven't. So I went back on your recommendation on two of these, actually.
Ooh.
First, I watched Chop and Steele, which I think you brought up on the show, but I know you've talked to me about.
I know I've talked to you about it.
Yeah, Chop and Steele is the VHS party found footage guys' little documentary film, I guess, about how they got sued, essentially. And my biggest thing with that is it's moderately entertaining. I feel like the majority of what's in that movie is kind of what we saw in their live thing that was at the Blind Pig in Ann Arbor. I kind of wish I had watched this first just to have a little bit better feel of what these guys are and what they do. Kind of endears you to them a little bit more. It makes them seem a little less like two weirdos just going to bars and making people watch old videos.
It's my dream job.
Still kind of, I was going to say, that's still kind of what they're doing at the root of it. But it's entertaining. It's a very easy watch. It's only like an hour long. And it's one of those stories that it's so stupid that you almost have to see it to believe it, as far as how far they take this gimmick that they're doing. And it's equally funny that they like pull this shit on like major news stations, local news stations. And aside from one person that they talk about, they never really catch on to it. That's kind of fucking funny. So in a day and age where you could like Google this stuff like so quick, and they bring it up, like you could search this like no problem. Just no one does their homework. It makes me feel like we should really find a way to con our way onto television at some point.
I'm sure we could.
Just for fun. Yeah, probably could. I don't know if that I want to that badly, but we could. This one I didn't realize was your recommendation because I forgot that you brought it up on the show, and then you yelled at me for forgetting about it.
Sounds like me.
So I think you know where I'm going with this. I watched the movie Nightmare at Noon, apparently on your recommendation, and I will say, yes. One, this movie's going to get its own at length episode probably at some point because it's just that much fun. But if you want a movie where people basically just run around kicking the shit out of each other and blowing shit up and shooting stuff for an hour and a half, this is the movie for you. There is a plot. There are people in this movie that are worth talking about. I don't even care about that right now. I just really enjoyed this movie because it is balls out insanity for an hour and a half. And I really like that when people get shot in this movie, they don't just fall down. They don't do the like Power Rangers, like jump back thing. They roll for like a solid 30 seconds, no matter where they are. Like they could be coming off the top of the mountain, or they could be falling off like an embankment on the side of the highway, or just like in a parking lot. And they just roll for an excessive amount of time every time they get shot. And I found that to be absolutely fucking hilarious. I don't know if it was supposed to be that funny, but I found it to be really funny.
When I brought it up on the show, it was basically something to the effect. This is the way it sticks out in my mind, is that this movie was just a bunch of stunt guys got together on their spare time, and they wanted to make a movie with a bunch of fighting and explosions and just for no reason, just things exploding and cars doing jumps and doing barrel rolls and all this shit just to do it.
And that's kind of how it feels, especially when you get into like the motorcycle stunts or the car stunts. They feel like they're shot on like, they're not shot on shitty quality. Like there's an actual professional camera there. You can tell that, but they're not set up in any spectacular, like Hollywood shot. They literally like, if they have a 100-yard run up to whatever they're going to jump and blow stuff up in, they basically just set one camera at the end of the run and leave it there and then go do the stunt. And that's the scene. And I think that's great. It's not that different because there's a lot of movies like that, but this one does it, I'd say, arguably better than a lot of them that I've seen doing that.
Feels like a stunt movie, but with a budget.
Not a big budget, but a budget.
Right, but
it's got a pyrotechnics budget for sure.
They had like $50 or so. They pulled their money together.
Bought a bunch of gasoline and lit it on fire. Yeah. So,
bunch of scrap wood.
Right. Then the other thing that I watched, which I was curious if you would watch this or not, I'm sure you have an opinion on this subject. I watched the documentary on the Liver King that is on Netflix right now. I'm assuming you have an opinion on him.
No, I really don't. I know that the documentary came out. It's a Netflix documentary. Is it an Untold version of the documentaries?
Yes.
I know it came out, but I didn't see any of the footage, any of the coverage about it. And I don't really know much about him. I've always been kind of intrigued because I've heard about him, but I just don't know that much about him.
Okay. So you're kind of in the same boat I'm in, or wasn't. Like I went into it thinking like, this guy seems like a douchebag. That was my initial thought. I was like, he's obviously on something, but he's claiming he's not. But so does everyone who's on something for the most part. Like Hulk Hogan wasn't on steroids, so they put him on trial.
Of course not.
Right. So that was kind of my thought, but I didn't know like everything about like his mantra and his bullshit, like how deep the like shit show went. And they only give you an hour of it, and it's an untold documentary, so they leave a lot untold, I'm sure. Like they very much so cliff note this thing, and it's. I put this up on Blue Sky. I said this is an hour and 8 minutes long, and it really could have sufficed being just 8 minutes long. And the reason I say that is by the end of this fucking thing, I was like, I know this guy could like suplex me to death more than likely, but I really just want to punch this guy in the face and like rip his beard out like with one firm grip. I'm going to ruin this a little bit, so I apologize if you want to watch this still, but like, he goes on this bullshit, like, I'm living like my ancestors did. I'm like, sure you are. That's why you're streaming your whole fucking life on Instagram and Twitter and shit and running around with assault rifles. He's like, well, I hunt like my ancestor. I'm like, yeah, but that cow that you just chased down and gutted with this fucking gold-plated Rambo knife is in a pen. That's not, I mean, I guess you're killing something, but I don't know if I would call that hunting per se. And is it hunting if it's a cow? Like, can you hunt a cow, or do you just slaughter
sure, cows were wild at some point.
I think they're called bulls at that point, but it's just dumb shit like that. And then he has other, like, he tells you this story about the first time he came, and he's like, I was just lifting weights and my dick got hard, and then I ejaculated on myself and realized I should probably jerk off more. I'm like, yeah, sure you did, douchebag. And it's the kind of documentary about a guy that you look at this guy and think this guy's probably a fucker, and you give him an hour and 8 minutes to prove it to you, and he just goes over and proves it to you over and over again, multiple times in that hour and 8 minutes. And, you know, I went into it, like I said, kind of thinking like, I don't know a whole lot about this guy. I kind of assume he's a tool, and holy shit, does he ram it home with like warp speed, you know? So that's on Netflix if you want to watch that. If you're interested, I mean, at least it's relatively short. Like, you're not wasting that much time watching it, but I feel like there's a ton of stuff that they don't even like. If this guy's got as much going on in his life as they kind of hint at on this movie or this documentary, and just about like where his company went, how he grew to like basically paid for followers without directly buying like bots and stuff like that, all this shit, I'm like, there's got to be a lot more to this story that we're not talking about in this little, you know, Untold documentary. But I could say with 100% clarity now, I'm like, no, he's a fucking douche. He's getting money off of it because apparently I'm sure he didn't get a Untold documentary that he's in without getting some kind of check to, you know, let them tell his story, quote, quote. Yeah. So yeah, I was curious. I know the show we like, Drew and Mike, they talked about it a little bit because I listened to it for about that clip and then I got distracted. But I was curious to see if you had consumed that yet, or if you were waiting on it or even interested in it.
I mean, I guess I'm a little interested, but at this point, I don't feel like I need to watch it. I think the show that you were talking about, Drew and Mike, the Drew Lane show, basically went into as much as I need to know. So I'm good.
Yeah. And I stand by my comment that so far this Untold series, if you want a good documentary, that's not really turning out to be a good place to get them. But
not the place for you.
But they keep getting relatively interesting subjects. So I guess I keep watching them and getting pissed off that I watched, as you do. Speaking of getting pissed off that you watch something, we're going to take a break and come back and talk about this week's topic, which is The Manipulator. Have you heard of that movie? Probably not, but we're going to tell you all about it anyway. So we'll be back in just a minute. Hi everyone, AI John here. Did you know that we're on the You Run Podcast Network? YouRunPodcast.com is home to great shows like You Gonna Eat That Crust, Pop Culture Reflections Podcast, Voices of the Mausoleum, and many more. Head over to YouRunPodcast.com and find your new favorite show today. All right, we are back, and as threatened, mentioned, promised, whatever, we're talking about the movie The Manipulator. It is from 1971. It has a couple people in it, and I won't spoil who because there won't be much to talk about if I do that. But we start with a third-party review, and this one is on Letterboxd. It's from Lowbrow Antics, and they say, what in God's green earth was Rooney tootin' on? Because that shit must have been strong to make him dance in time-lapse like that. It's straight nightmare fuel. 2.5 out of 5 stars.
I mean, that's like a 5 out of 10. That's not that bad.
You put it that way, I guess that's not that bad. Sean, would you like to tell us what The Manipulator is about?
I would love to tell you what The Manipulator is about. So for that, I go to IMDb, I type in the words The Manipulator, and I pull up a movie from 1971. It's got an R rating. It is an hour and 25 minutes according to IMDb, but the version that I watched is an hour and 30 minutes. So maybe I got a director's cut. This gets a 3.9 out of 10 with 347 glistening reviews. We're going to go to the storyline and the plot, never know which one's first, but they wouldn't put it on top if you weren't supposed to read it first. And it says, an insane Hollywood makeup man kidnaps a woman, keeps her prisoner in his warehouse full of props. And if we scroll on down to, I guess, the storyline, because that's what else is here, it says the same thing. An insane Hollywood makeup man kidnaps a woman, keeps her prisoner in his warehouse full of props.
I mean, that's pretty accurate. Who's in this movie, Sean? Because there's a very large, well fleshed out cast.
It is so huge. It has 3 people in the cast. Now, there are a bunch of actors that are in this movie, or a bunch of people. I'm not sure if they're really actors, but they go uncredited. The 3 actors that we have here, we have Mickey Rooney, who you may know as the Depression era children's star person. He has been in a ton of stuff. He's probably got the most credits of anybody I've ever seen, with 344 IMDb credits to his name. He was a child star in the Depression. He transitioned into an adult star. You may know him, probably people of the era that are watching movies today. I think his most known character for like a normal person would be Gus from the Night at the Museum franchise. He also plays other horror fans, like people who are fans of the genre may know him as Geppetto from Silent Night, Deadly Night 5. We
talked about that this winter.
Yeah, he
briefly.
He was 51 years old in this movie. He looks like he looks much older than that. The poster that is for this movie makes him look like he's probably in his 70s when this movie was made, but it's a different era. Mickey Rooney. Other 2 small stars, we have Luana Anders, who plays Carlotta. I think she was kind of a bit player. She was in Easy Rider. She was in Pit and the Pendulum. I think she came up in that same era as Jack Nicholson, and I think he was like they were contemporaries of some kind. Also, the last character we have is Keenan Wynn. He plays Old Charlie. He was in Dr. Strangelove. He was in Piranha. He was Chester Copperpot from The Goonies. He was in The Absent-Minded Professor. So he's been in quite a few things. I think he had over 100 and some odd credits to his name as well, which is kind of commonplace to this era. The other thing I wanted to mention, this is directed, you will not know this name, but I thought it was a good name. His name is Yabo Yablonsky. This is his only feature film directing credit. He also directed like a Willie Nelson special in 1979 or something like that. This was written by Yabo Yablonsky and John Duran. And John Duran, you probably won't know John Duran's name, but John, you'll appreciate this. He also wrote The Devil Times 5.
Oh, well, Hall of Fame.
Hall of Fame screenwriter.
When I saw Yabo Yablonsky, I thought that sounded like a Simpsons character, which is fitting because I also thought Mickey Rooney it'd be the other way around, but he's basically dressed like Ned Flanders through the majority of this movie. So,
yeah, the vest, the collared shirt, the pants.
So, Sean, why did we pick this movie?
All right. So for me, the reason that I know I blame this on you, but it's my fault. I apologize to the audience. I apologize to you. I apologize to everyone.
I'm also equally at fault because I suggested that we watch a new movie like The Monkey, and somehow we still ended up watching this shit. So
The Monkey, The Manipulator, they both start with the. I mean, it's very easy to get them mixed up. So the M. I'm like a really big fan of movies that are. Yeah, I'm a really big fan of shit, number one. And I'm very intrigued by movies that, especially 70s movies, that are just totally out there, experimental cinema. They usually don't end up being very good movies, but I'm a huge fan of these movies that people talk about. Like like you and I think initially the way that we kind of hit it off about movies is we were like, oh, have you seen this one? And we kind of went back and forth on all these like just weirdo pieces of shit movies that we watched. And this really fits that bill. Not to tip my hand too much, but like the 70s were full of this and late 60s were full of this experimental cinema where if you made it today, it would be basically the try-hard movies. If you made it now, it's obvious that you're trying too hard to make something to be edgy. But in the era of stuff like Easy Rider, movies like that, where it's like they really subvert, they really take a hold of counterculture and they try to be They try to be different and to present like alternate thoughts and alternate kind of like views on the world. And this movie, so by this point, Mickey Rooney, like I mentioned before, he was 51 years old. I feel like this movie, and I don't want to get too much into like go too far into like likes and dislikes because you just kind of asked why I picked this. But this is like a movie where he was known as being this kind of goody-goody actor. He never really had many edgy roles. I think he was in a movie from 1929, but like the 30s, think stuff like Shirley Temple, Judy Garland, like those were his. I know Shirley Temple and Judy Garland were like way different ages, but that was like Judy Garland was like a contemporary of Mickey Rooney. And this movie feels like a movie where he would have taken the role so that he could go against typecast, essentially. Like psychedelic, weird 70s cinema I love. Again, they don't always turn out good, but think of something, I don't know if you've ever heard of this movie, but Skidoo, where it's basically a movie about Jackie Gleason on acid, like on LSD. Or think of a movie like from 1970, I think it was 1970, The Pound, where Robert Downey Sr. directs this movie and Robert Downey Jr. is in the movie, but each person in the movie is supposed to play a different kind of dog. And the movie's supposed to take place in a dog pound. Robert Downey Jr. is all of like 5 years old and he's playing a puppy in this movie, The Pound, or I think it's called Pound, actually. Like one of those kind of movies where it's just so out there. And it's one of those movies that you hear about. Like I really am looking forward to whenever it gets released to see The Day the Clown Cried, which is like a Jerry Lewis movie that he makes where he's a clown in the Holocaust. Like just weird movies that nobody's heard of and nobody's heard of for a long time. I just love watching experimental movies. And I've spoken way too long. But that's really why I picked this, because I needed someone else to watch this with me. I needed the courage of someone like you to watch a movie like this with someone like me.
Well, I'm glad to do that. I will challenge your premise a little bit that, yes, Mickey Rooney was known as child star and, you know, all that type of shit, but he did a lot of stuff in the 50s and the 60s where he played either some kind of gangster or some kind of criminal or things of that nature. Yeah, that kind of
You
gangster.
killed You Dirty Rat. You killed my brother. That's James Cape.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. He did a lot of stuff like that. So I don't know. I don't know of any other movie that's quite like this that he's done. I would think, if anything, Silent Night, Deadly Night 5 is the only one that comes to mind that's even remotely close to this. But that's a whole different kind of shit that we, if any, at the earliest, it will take 3 years to get to that. And I don't even think we're going to do that. So I think he did have a little bit of a breaking out of the whole typecasting thing. But I also think that for the most part, like basically 70s and earlier, when you say experimental, I feel like a lot of that is Hollywood just trying to figure out what a movie can be. And that's why you get so many things that range everything from just taking this genre, which I guess we're going to call this a horror movie for the sake of the argument that I'm going to make. You get everything from a movie like this all the way to the other side of the pendulum, like a movie like Halloween in the same decade. That's just way more fleshed out, way more like a lot of things that this movie's not. But you also see movies in this era. Can I interrupt you
in that though?
Please do.
All right. Please do. So like you think of Halloween, when did Halloween come out?
78.
Okay. So if you think of a movie that came out in 1991, we'll put it a little bit more like
I know where you're going with this and you're absolutely right. So
something from the 1 year of a decade is much more like the previous decade than something with an 8. So
I completely
in the 7
agree.
years between this movie, this came out in 1971. So between something that came out in 1971 and 1978, it's huge swings in as to what like the expectations are for that type of thing.
And I agree with you. I'm just saying my point with this is I feel like a lot of this really from the 50s up through the 70s is a lot of Hollywood just figuring out what a movie can be or what it can do. And again, that's my example is an extreme broad stroke. Like these, honestly, even if these are both considered horror movies, they're not both horror movies in that sense. But my point is like, they just did so many wacky shit and so much shit felt like, let's throw some shit at the wall and see what sticks. And this kind of feels like one of those movies that, well, we're going to throw it at the wall. I can't imagine this had more than like if this had a $10,000 budget, I'd be kind of surprised. Like there's not a lot to this movie. And I'm not even saying that as a negative. I actually respect the fact that this is probably shot on like a home video camera for $15 and they just happened to get like blackmail Mickey Rooney into doing this movie or something. However it came about, I can't imagine that there was a lot in this other than it being some sort of passion project for him. God knows why. And that's how we got this.
He got lured in by the writer of Devil Times 5, John. I mean,
that's a very fair argument. So Devil Times 5 aside, Sean, was there anything that you liked in this movie?
I liked a whole lot about this movie. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you.
I feel like it's a loaded question.
Yeah. We definitely, I know that like on this show, we talk a lot about movies and it feels like at the end, a lot of times we agree. And I feel like we do have a lot of commonalities, like in the things that we like and the things that we're looking for. But I feel like you don't have a lot of, you have a lot of tolerance for shit too, but there's like certain types of shit that you don't have tolerance for. And I feel like this is a movie that you don't have tolerance for. But I just had to, number one.
Saying that because I told you it sucked already.
Well, I didn't want to get into that, but one of the tenets of this show is that we do not talk to each other about what the movie is about until we come on here and we start talking about it for everybody to hear. And I felt,
we try.
Well, I don't break that code because I'm very kayfabe about it. But like, I didn't, when you told me that you didn't like it, essentially, I mean, I think your direct quote was, "This movie sucks." It really kind of influenced the way that I was going to start watching this movie. And I was really surprised that I actually, like, I'm not ever going to go out on a limb for this. Like, if you put a gun to my head and you said, "Should you watch this?" I'm not to tip my hand, but I'm not going to say to watch it. But I like the fact, number one thing that we've always, maybe not always, but one thing that we've like really gotten behind is the movement towards more dongs in cinema. And there is definitely old dude dong in this movie, like very early within the first like 20 minutes or so of this movie. But I just had to laugh at the absurdity of all of it. There's like the time-lapse stuff that our guest reviewer talked about with Mickey Rooney dancing around with the broom and kind of going into it and all this stuff. The movie, so just to kind of put a really quick synopsis together, essentially Mickey Rooney is some kind of, at least you can glean it from the synopsis, he's some kind of movie person. Like he's having these like schizophrenic delusions where he is taking on the role of a director of a film or some kind of cineplay or something. And he has kidnapped a woman and he talks to these inanimate objects, like these different mannequins. And he has these full-fledged conversations where he's speaking all the different roles. And he has this woman held captive. And we go like 12 minutes into the movie before we even know that there's another person in this movie. And that's Carlotta, which that's probably not her real name, but she's been kidnapped and she's being held like bound in this wheelchair. And the first thing, and
bound,
it was going to be
poorly, by the way.
Yeah, for sure. But my first intro, when we do the show intro and you ask me how I am, it's usually some kind of quote. And I was going to say, "I'm hungry, Mr. Lang." She says, "I'm hungry, Mr. Lang. I'm hungry, Mr. Lang." And she just starts freaking out because she's just been held captive in this chair. And he feeds her, he like pours this water for her. He feeds her like baby food, applesauce. All this it's just this weird thing. So all these different things that feed into just the general weirdness of this movie. It's just chaos. It's like chaos in movie form. And Mickey Rooney comes out and he's got the Harlequin, like weird, like overdone makeup where he's got heavy blush and heavy eyeliner. He's got lipstick on. He's like got his hair combed over. He's got a little swoop on the front. Just all these different things that are going into establishing, as much as you can establish a movie that feels like you're just on acid, like on the bad shit the whole time. The movie really follows this storyline of this old director or whatever he is, and he's trying to put on this production of Cyrano De Bergerac with Carlotta. Carlotta's a character in that story. So
I only know this because I looked it up based off the original title. The original title for this movie is B.J. Lang Presents.
Yes.
So the premise is he is a former producer, and this is what he's doing now. I actually think that premise is giving it too much credit, because I think if you went into this movie not knowing that, you could, because I didn't really know that till after I watched it and started looking up stuff for it for this show. I almost watched it kind of not knowing if he actually had like a history of like producing movies or if he was just some they kind of imply pretty heavily that this is not the first girl. So you almost get this vibe that he's some kind of serial killer or something like that. In fact, he says several times that this is not the first girl, but it's also presented in a way that you're never really 100% sure what he's saying that's true and what he's just fucking saying for the sake of saying it. So the movie plays almost, if you want to sell the movie, this movie plays like a serial killer's descent into madness with one victim and how the whole thing goes out. I think what you're saying, like the whole, he kidnapped this girl and he's in his head making, or was making a movie. I almost feel like whether he was actually a producer or a makeup effects artist or whatever the fuck he was before, I think this movie's more effective not knowing that and just having him be out of his fucking mind. And if you go into it with that, like, thought with it, I'm not going to go as far to say that this is good, but it's almost impressive to see, because really this movie is just two people acting off of each other. This is almost like a play, but done on film, because there's a set and there's one other guy that shows up for like 2 seconds. But there's really just, this movie is entirely based off, or it's all its strengths and all its weaknesses fall on the two leads. And without them, I mean, you have to give them all the credit and all the criticism, because they're pretty much all that's in this entire film.
And the way, and I feel like I'm turning you, John. I feel like you had you were going to come in here with 0 hot dogs and maybe we were going to get a half. But the way that the movie's told too, it's very hard to describe because it's told in this really chaotic, just like the thralls of a schizophrenic, I don't know, like vision of grandeur or something. But it's also told in these 3 like different states of consciousness. We have Mickey Rooney as a regular person. The guy sitting in the seat having the psychotic break where there's like, they show images of these 2 older nude people dancing around, and one's like a butler, one's a singer, and she like transforms constantly with like her everything showing nude. There's the storyline of Mickey Rooney, because we never see Carlotta where she is not with him other than towards the end. But then there's also this additional level of flashback, and you're never really quite sure. I mean, I feel like you're kind of a little bit more sure that the story that's being played with BJ Lang and Carlotta is the actual story, but there's this whole like dream sequence thing where he's sitting in the chair flipping the fuck out. And there's this other part where it's told in flashbacks or flash forward where he's at this party and people are having like saltines as their food that they're eating. A baby shows up and they hand the baby to him and everybody's crushing in on BJ and Mickey Rooney holding the baby. It's just this weird amalgamation of this totally unhinged performance, but under control. Unhinged, but under control performance by Mickey Rooney. And I feel like there's the one argument that can be made that this movie is basically what happens when you let someone who is really good at ad-libbing and just kind of going with the flow dictate what your movie's going to be about, because it almost feels like there's no script to this movie. Like Mickey Rooney, they just like, oh yeah, just this is the outline. It's like a Curb Your Enthusiasm episode where they kind of tell you the outline, they tell the actors the outline of the thing, and then they just ad-lib until they get some kind of semblance of a story. I love that they have all these odd angles. They show it, some of it's out of focus. Like you said, it's like it should be on a big stage. It's almost like a stage play that they've recorded and put on film. And the quality is almost shot on Shidio. It's like, it looks like some kind of hybrid because it looks too clear to be film. But
it's also 1971, so grain of salt.
Yeah, for sure.
It's not like it's ever been remastered or re-released or anything like that. So,
God damn it. He's just running around the floor. I think it is. I think there is a Blu-ray version of this. But the last thing I'll say about my likes, and I'll let you, because I know you have a multitude. You have like a cornucopia of likes that you want to spew. But I love the scene where BJ, Mickey Rooney, falls over and he pretends like he's dying. And Carlotta calls him out like, you are not dying. I know you're an actor. I know you're a good actor. I know that you're pretending that you're dying. And he's constantly like just gulping air and like, pills. I need my pills. And she's strapped into this chair and can't get the pills for him. It's this real like actual moment of tension in this movie. Obviously, you know that she gets out because the movie would just be over after 45 minutes or whatever. But she finally gets out of the chair, and then she's having her own psychotic break, like after that. And once she gives him the pills, he just like instantly flips, and she's like, you were fucking with me. Like, I knew that you were acting. And he's like, thank you, my dear. You know, it proves to me that you love me, and all this like weird soliloquy bullshit that happens after it. But I really enjoyed the scene because she calls him out on his bullshit, and you can start to see like the Stockholm syndrome of her starting to actually flip and be sympathetic for this guy. Like once he cuts her bonds, she doesn't have to help him, but because he's the manipulator, she ends up turning around and helping him regardless.
I feel like you should take a look at not the Blu-ray. There is a DVD. There's not a Blu-ray. It's only $7.99 at Walmart, apparently.
Perfect.
But I feel like you should take a look at the cover, because the cover is definitely not going to set you up for what you get from this movie.
Is it one of those DVDs? It's probably one of those DVDs that's like one movie there are 20 movies on one disc, like one of those things.
Doesn't look like it. It looks like its own. Looks like its own. It is its own release. And if I come across this at a Walmart for $7, I'm picking it up because, you know, I like trash. But anyway, I think for me, the things that like the biggest positives I can give this movie is I like the sheer breaks into lunacy that Mickey Rooney does, because, you know, we kind of hinted at, I think we hit record at this point, but we hinted at him dancing around to the Chattanooga Choo Choo and like these other songs and all this like gleeful playing and all this shit. And then he'll pop out kind of sort of looking like John Wayne Gacy, even though I don't remember the year that John Wayne Gacy got caught, but I think this predates him by a decade or so. That was the 80s, wasn't it? Gacy?
I think so. Early 80s.
Yeah. Yeah. So it should predate John Wayne Gacy. Maybe this is where he got the idea for his makeup. I don't know. It's a scary thought. Just think John Wayne Gacy is sitting around watching The Manipulator.
Watching The Manipulator. Yeah.
Right.
He's in the fine art house 70s films.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's kind of the biggest positive I can give this movie is, you know, there's things that you mentioned that I can agree with. Like, I like how this is obviously like a project that is like experimental in nature. Like you're not going into this and getting like a big budget Hollywood production with, you know, important things like a script and a plot that might weigh down the production. This is very much so a movie that feels like it's fly by the seat of the pants. We're just going to put the camera on Mr. Rooney and Jiminy Jokers. This is what's happening now. We're going with it. And that's fine.
Mr. Rooney, can you do that take again?
That's about the best I can give it. There's a lot of things that happen, and I'm just going to go ahead and segue into negatives, and then I'll let you say whatever you want that's negative with it. The shit that annoys me with this movie, I really hate how like weak and kind of dumb they make Carlotta, because spoilers here for this fucking old ass movie that we're probably not tell you to watch. Like, she manages to get free. She's cut loose by Mickey Rooney with a knife at one point, and she proceeds to start trying to kick his ass, and she's not doing very good with it, but she's, you know, attacking him, and he's kind of down. I wouldn't say he's down for the count, but he's not up right away when she gets free. There is so much shit in this room. Even if she didn't do the obvious thing and take the knife and attack him with the knife, take your wheelchair and beat him over the head with that. Like, do something. Like, you are obviously in a bad situation. There's only Mickey Rooney there. I'm pretty sure a malnutrition like woman can still beat the shit out of Mickey Rooney at any point in his career. Like, we're not talking about it like he's Danny Trejo. This is Mickey Rooney that's got you locked up. You know, I don't think he can fight for shit. And she kicks him like 3 times and is like, okay, I'm going to sit here and cry now. And sure enough, like it doesn't go well. Like that, usually the trope of like the victim is really dumb in a movie. I just kind of like shake it off because it's part of the movie. Maybe it's because there's only really 2 people in this movie and it's so heavily relying on their performance. But that really fucking annoyed me in this, how much she just lets him off the hook to continue this, I say nightmare for lack of better wording. I guess it would pretty suck. I'm sorry. I just got an advertisement on IMDB for a shirt that says "My wife beats me," which seems really accurate for this movie, I guess. So anyway, yeah, that's my biggest gripe with this movie is she's just so fucking dumb, and all the other things that I could say that like I can't really give this movie a lot of credit for plot because I'm not even sure there is a plot in this movie other than what we've already said. I can't give it a lot of like writing credit because we both said it. I'm not sure there was any writing in this. This feels like he very well might have ad-libbed the majority of this movie. And I'm not going to knock it for like how it looks from a, quality standpoint. Like, I don't think that's a negative per se, but it's also not a positive. I mean, I don't have an old TV. Like, if you have an old CRT TV, this might look better on that than what it did on like, an HD TV, but it looked noticeably not great, which is fine because it's old. It's not remastered or anything crazy like that, but it also isn't a positive. So it's kind of in this weird like gray area. I think that's kind of where my biggest like gripe with this movie as a whole comes from, is there's not enough good shit in it to get me to just be like, okay, you need to watch it for this, or this. There's not enough of that in there to kind of push me over the edge to be like, to overlook all the things that annoy me with it. But there's also not enough like bad shit in it to be like, this is the worst thing. This is fucking down there with In a Violent Nature and Stone Cold in the Woods. That's kind of where my negatives mainly lie with it. You?
I think for me, I got to agree with you. I think the movie, it's too all over the place. It's so all over the place that what little story there is, it's all inferred. There's no clear plot. There's no outline of what is actually happening on screen. It's just kind of like a bunch of takes or something. It feels like a lot of the movie was kind of one take and they cut together what they could from multiple camera angles, and even if they're out of focus or whatever the issue is. But my other thing is, like, I think with movies like this, you're kind of trying to, for lack of a better term, you're trying to like dig the crate, right? You're trying to dig through the crate of all the vinyl to get the cool beat that you want to put in. And I feel like there are so many movies that have so many, I know that's a really odd reference, but there's so many movies that you read about and you read what other people say about them and you're like, okay, I want to see this. This sounds like a movie that is going to be just classic. And you have to mine through all those.
This is not one of those movies because no one's watched it to say anything about it.
Well, but movies like this have cult followings. So
sure,
when you start to look up like, oh, I read a really brief synopsis, like a 2-paragraph or a 2-sentence synopsis of what this movie is, and it sounds like amazing garbage that I really need to see, you end up catching a lot of movies where they're really not that interesting, but they're really different in the respect that it's not like a Hollywood blockbuster, or it's not the kind of performance that you would expect from this kind of actor. And I do have to say, one of my, I expected this like dislike argument that we were going to have was going to be like the teeter-totter, right? Where I was going to be really heavily on the positive side and you were really going to negatively be on the negative side. You were really going to be on the negative side of it. And we were going to be like on the fulcrum, a straight line. But I think we're kind of in agreement on some of the gripes that you have. And I think another thing for me is like looking at the poster for this movie, it's an older Mickey Rooney than he actually is in this movie, with the beard, with the short, he's kind of bald, more male pattern baldness than he had in this movie, and a woman that's kind of being held up by strings like she's some kind of puppet. And it really kind of threw my expectation of the movie, because it felt like the poster for this movie, or at least the VHS box art or whatever, overplays this old, quote unquote, old nature of Mickey Rooney. And again, like I mentioned at the top of the show, when I saw him on the cover of this movie, I'm expecting some guy to be in like his 80s or his late 70s. And we get a guy that's just in his early 50s. Like that kind of.
He's also like 30 pounds heavier on this box art than he is in the movie.
Yeah, you look at it and you're like, oh, this is going to be like an old, out of shape Mickey Rooney. He's like he's in early 50s. He was 51 when this movie was released. And he's still spry. He's still agile. He's still like running all over the place. He's doing this ridiculous like Charlie Chaplin style time lapse
aside
dancing.
from the schnoz and the clown makeup, he looks fine.
Yeah,
like as far as
and
what we know of Mickey Rooney,
expected because it's a Cyrano de Bergerac like storytelling plot device. So I didn't have a whole lot of dislikes. I just kind of let it wash over me, and I accepted it for what it was, for better or for worse.
I don't have a lot to add. Do you have much to add to it at this point?
Then you're in for a big treat, bro, because it's hot dog time.
Do you want to take the lead, or you want me to go first?
Yeah, I'll take the lead on this one. I'll say that this movie is an absolute fever dream. It's very hard to know how much of it is real, how much of it is in BJ's head. the part where he's Cyrano, the part where he's sitting in the recliner, or the flashbacks of him in like another life, it's anyone's guess. As I mentioned, top of the hour, as I mentioned at the top of the show, I'm a huge fan of weird cinema, of weird experimental movies. And reading the synopsis of the movie, the role seemed very out of the ordinary for someone like Mickey Rooney, but it would also allow him to be like, could display his unbridled insanity. And I knew that it would be something, and I knew that something wasn't going to be necessarily like good in the traditional sense of the word. I don't think this is the type of movie that's for everyone. I absolutely don't think that everybody should go out like immediately and go click the link in our notes to go find where they can watch this. It's pure chaos. It's like schizophrenia put to film, but I love finding weird out there movies. And in that respect, this movie totally fulfilled that. I'm going to give Manipulator just half a hot dog. Like, I'm not going to say it's that you shouldn't watch it. I'm not going to say it's like a movie you should go out and immediately go see. Do I think everyone will enjoy this movie or they'll want to see it? No, absolutely not. Do I think it's worth watching once to go to the next time you and your friends are sitting around drinking beer and you want to tell them about this weird movie that you saw that had Mickey Rooney in it? Absolutely. It falls into that category of like Gondo's 70s cinema. You know, for someone like me, I totally put it in that. I don't expect a lot out of it. Was it entertaining? I thought it was. You won't like it, but I think it's something that you'll remember. Again, The Manipulator, half a hot dog from me.
Whose hot dog is this, huh? Is it yours?
I'm really not that far off from you. I went into this movie also with extremely low expectations, basically no expectations at all. I don't know what I expected. I mean, there is a trailer for this movie. I don't know what's on it. I didn't watch it. I didn't really read anything about it. All I saw was this box cover and thought, all right, that seems like a movie. And I mean, everything you said, I agree with. Everything you said is 100% accurate. I think the difference is going to be that I'm not giving it a hot dog. And the only reason why is because at the end of the day, I did not enjoy watching this. So all those things, like it's weird, it's different, it's fucked up, all those things are true and all those things have merit. And if that's your thing, then I guess go watch it. And I always say that you should watch it. Don't take my opinion of it. But I hope I never watch this movie again. This will not be something that we show at Frankenstein's because I don't want to watch it again. It's not exactly weird and all those adjectives, weird and crazy and drugged out and however you want to describe that. Those are all fun and good things. But at the end of the day, like, I just didn't enjoy my time in this little world of the Manipulator. So I don't really want to go back to it. And that's why I can't give it anything more than 0 hot dogs, because it's memorable, but it's not good. So it's not that I can't think of anyone other than you who I would say, yeah, you probably should watch this movie. So
You would really like this movie.
I didn't say that. I said you should watch it. But outside of that, like, I would never sit down with the wife and be like, let's watch The Manipulator. You'll really hate this.
Thanks. I hate it. Could you imagine watching this at Frankenstein's, though?
I can. I don't really want to, though.
I do have a question for you, and I don't know if you can answer it for me or not. But this movie features a lot of... There's a scene near the end where they're like, these old people are playing like a symphony. You know, there's people playing the violin, the cello, and all that stuff. And I always wonder, when you see like really elderly people in movies that are just fucking way out there, what would compel someone to be like, oh, yeah, you know, I'll play the violin in this like big meat locker with all the sides of beef and shit hanging down and like bisected pigs. And like, do you ever wonder like what goes through someone's head that's, yeah, I'll sign up for that. That's me. I'll do that.
Normally, I would think money, but with this movie, I don't think that's the case. I do hope, there's a part of me that hopes when I turn 85, I really hope that someone comes up to me and says, hey, do you want to be dick out playing a violin in a meat locker while, I don't know, Leonardo DiCaprio is going insane for an hour and a half? Or actually, better one, Jonathan Taylor Thomas, because he's been disappeared for a while now. Decides to go insane for an hour and a half. Like, yeah, I could dick out for that. Sure, why not?
Yeah, maybe it's just lack of fucks given at that point.
Yeah, maybe. Or maybe you just like tormenting young people because it's not like other elder. I mean, maybe they did. Mickey Rooney was a pretty big star for a while there. Maybe he got some senior citizen who's like, I really loved him back on whatever the fuck he was on.
Chattanooga Choo Choo. That's my favorite song. I can't believe he cameoed.
Yeah, see, there we go. In other news, I'm more interested in this movie called Black Hooker. That's a more like this movie. We'll go ahead and mark that as a to watch. And we did do a question of the week this week. There weren't a whole lot of answers, but this week's question of the week is, how do you view the experimental cinema of the 1970s? And are there any standout films that you would recommend? We only got 2 responses, which is okay, because they're a little more wordy than usual, which I'm fine with. We're going to start over on Threads, and on Threads, we have at Pop Culture Reflections Podcast, which is our friend Justin. Remember, both these are network members, so if you like either of these responses, go to yourunpodcast.com and find their respective shows. They're both great. And Justin says, 70s cinema as a whole seemed pretty experimental. I've always been hit and miss on the genre, and some of the standouts for me are Louis Burnell's The Discreet Charm of the Bourgeoisie and David Lynch's Eraserhead. So, was that the 70s? I thought that was the 80s.
Eraserhead?
Yeah.
I can't speak on the other one, but no, Eraserhead was like a David Lynch student film.
I knew it was that. I thought it was later than that. Then over on Blue Sky, our friend Boomer, who is at Podcast in the Woods, you can go check them out. And we've both been on their show recently. I don't know when the episode I was on is coming out, but Sean's episode is out now. And Boomer says the 70s is one of my favorite eras of horror. There are so many heavy hitters. Of course, I have to shout out all the wonderful giallo flicks, which was in its heyday in the 70s. But if I was to pick something for you guys specifically, I would say Tourist Trap is a great, weird, and fun slasher. I've actually not seen Tourist Trap. Have you?
I have. Chuck Connors is the... Oh, yes. I don't want to... Yep, Chuck Connors. I don't want to give it away.
It's on the posters. It's Chuck Connors and
oh, okay, cool.
Trap.
Yeah, I wasn't like super impressed with Tourist Trap. I expected a lot more out of it. But yeah, it was, I mean, I can see it. Boomer, no shade. Just my opinion.
I don't think he takes it as shade.
Good. We talked about Deep Red.
Like,
that's what we talked about when I was on Podcast in the Woods most recently. The giallo flick.
Is that one 70s or is that one 80s?
It's 70s. Yep.
70s. So giallo. I don't know shit about giallo.
The color yellow.
Is that what it means?
I think so.
I guess it was red. Okay.
You would think.
Yeah. So, color wheel aside, Sean, do you have any 70s favorites that you'd like to point out or mention? I don't. So, if you want to mention a couple, go for it.
I don't have a couple, but the one that comes to mind is El Topo, which is Alejandro Jodorowsky, who, if you would believe what he said, he basically had his own Dune thing that he was going to film before David Lynch got signed onto it, and it ended up being everything got stolen for Star Wars, according to Alejandro. But yeah, El Topo is like a Western that, and Holy Mountain, which, yeah, Jodorowsky in the 70s was like full on acid trip. El Topo is basically, I'm not going to get into it, but a lot of it is him riding around with his naked son, who was actually his son, like his real life son, Jodorowsky's real life son, nude throughout this entire movie as like a 6-year-old or something. I think he's dragging a coffin around, but I might be confusing it with something else. But yeah, look up, essentially, if you want to see any kind of gonzo 70s cinema, I personally would say start watching it, Jodorowsky.
Okay.
Crazy shit.
Well, crazy shit is good. Anything else for this week?
No, John.
All right. Well, then we are going to go ahead and wrap up here. Again, if you would like to follow us, you can do that all over the place. We are on social medias at Dewey Podmonster or on Blue Sky at crap.town. You can also go to any podcast platform and follow us on there. If you do, we would greatly appreciate it if you left us a review or a rating on the show. That would be awesome. We are available on YouTube. You can watch us if you want to see us for some reason. I don't know why you would, but you can. And of course, you can go to yourunpodcast.com where you can find both Boomer and Justin shows on there, as well as all the other great shows on the You Run Podcast Network. Sean, what am I forgetting?
Well, late show correction. I wanted to correct the Western where the guy drags the coffin is actually Django, the Italian Django from 1966. But to answer John's question, what I wanted to say was that if you wanted your answer to the question of the week read on this here show, you can go on all the social media, follow us at Dewey Podmonster. John posts those on the social media that he cares about. and you can answer it, and your answer could be read on the show. If you are interested in any of the things that we talked about in the show, they will be linked in the show notes. Most of those are free. We try to go out of our way to make sure that they're free. If you want to watch some of this garbage that we talk about, we try to make it as free as possible. But if it's not free, it will say Amazon afterwards. And if you click on one of those links, those are affiliate links, and we get a small cut, like 0.1% of a dollar that you spend based on your expenditure. And, it's the best way to support the show. The other great way to support the show is to leave us feedback on all the different podcast platforms. You can leave us a review. You could tell a friend to listen, to watch. That would help out the show. Other than that, if you want to follow me on social media, I am exclusively on Blue Sky. I am at internalbleeding.crap.town. On Blue Sky, I post silly little clips of some of the movies that we talk about, some of the other things that I watch on my own. I post little clips of silly little movies that I watch on social media, and you can find them there on Blue Sky.
And that's it. That's all we got this week. We'll be back next week. Until then, swill up, Butthorns. Have yourself a good week, and we'll talk to you soon.
Bird season's over, Butthorn.
Blah, blah, blah.